Everything I do is driven by survival, and that's a double-edged sword. It's a good thing because it helps me just crack on, because my life has never been easy. Apart from that 3-year window that I told you that everything was okay, it's been very difficult. I don't mind saying that there's been many times I just wish I wasn't here.
Oh, hey girlfriend, how are you doing? I hope you've had a good week so far. You are listening to the Curl Squad's Curl Power podcast with me, Zoe Fox. Were you able to check out my last episode, which was all about the time that I went to rehab, spinal cord injury rehab? I hope you enjoyed it. And actually, did you realise that this month is Disability Pride Month? Hey, did you know that? Well, if you didn't, then you do now. So happy Disabled Pride Month to you. So now, I know that the analytics don't lie, right? And they do tell me that you guys like the shorter episodes, and those are the episodes that are most consumed. But there really is value in long form conversation and storytelling, I think. Like, I used to love nothing more than back in the day, like my go-to podcasts were Joe Rogan. So I'd love a good Joe Rogan episode that was like a good 2-3 hours, especially like the Graham Hancock ones where you just get lost in this whole like TARDIS of conversation and exploring all these different subjects and stuff. And I'd also really enjoy listening to London Real. That was another one of my favourite pods back in the day. And I'd pop on a podcast on a drive, say driving from London to Birmingham, and I'd always just feel so much more enriched after it, like spending that time to just zone into a good pod. Always leaves me feeling like I'm a better person at the end of it. Or if I'm not a better person, then it makes me want to take those next steps to be a better person. So that's what I enjoy about the long form conversation. And yeah, to be honest, like especially with the long Joe Rogan ones, I didn't always do it in one big swoop, but I would often go back and like just catch up with bits when I'm doing the washing up or when I'm in the bath or whatever. But that is the beauty of podcasting for me, is just to be able to get lost in the conversations, and it's just for when your soul needs something a little bit more than just the mindless scrolling of like Instagram. And I love Instagram, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it does make me feel like a little bit of a goldfish, just like swipe onto the next. So anyway, this episode is one that I recorded before I went into hospital. And then yeah, the hospital announcement threw everything off plan, and it's been on hold for a minute. So I'm very excited to finally be getting this one out. It is my longest episode yet. So, and my guest today has recently pulled off a stunning photo shoot using all black vendors for the Curly Bride company. She has recently also been selected to fulfill a VIP order for Jorga Smith. I think it was for Jorga Smith's press packs. So yeah, how cool is that? And she has been through a lot, but she's achieved a lot. And I know if she was my mum, I'd be super proud. Today I am going to be speaking to serial entrepreneur Sacha Atherton, CEO of the Happy Hair Company, and Sacha runs the Happy Hair Company with her 10-year-old daughter, Jaya. So the Happy Hair Company as a brand provide affordable luxury protective hair care for afro, curly, natural hair, and she has got a customer base that spans the globe. And you know what? It doesn't surprise me, because those bonnets, they do not come off. And I'm a customer, a legit customer. And yeah, I can confirm these bonnets stay put. My mum's got one too. Sacha and Jaya also use their platform on Instagram to tackle some really challenging subjects that need to be discussed, but people often feel uncomfortable confronting some of the conversations. So I've always got mad respect for her putting her head up above the parapet and just saying what needs to be said. One of their best-selling products is actually the innovative anti-frizz bamboo TLC towel. As a self-taught hair care specialist, Sacha is in the know about all things curly hair, and she doesn't just care about the curl, she cares about health as well. So she has a very mindful approach when it comes down to ingredients and things like that. So after going live with the company, it had such great interest. Sacha has also branched out to do things like salon treatments and education right across the country. Her brand portfolio also includes the Curly Bride Company, which is a high-end bridal accessory store. And I wish I had that when I got married, perhaps I wouldn't have straightened my hair, because let me tell you, when I was Googling at the time I got married, there was not much on curly hair at all. And people who were marketing themselves as doing curly wedding hair, it was just crazy. So if I could have got myself a nice little curly hair accessory, I probably could have just made it look pretty good myself. She's also got Jamaican candles, which are Jamaican scented non-toxic candles, and they smell so good. Again, customer, like, well, my mum's a customer of the candles, and I was ready to steal the Pickney powder candle when I went to my mum's. They smell amazing. And this is the thing, I've never actually met Sacha. I don't know her. This isn't me just bigging up a friend's business. Like, I met her through her brand on Instagram and have been a fan of her products ever since, and just a fan of her. And I can really see that she's motivated by motherhood. You know, she does what she does for her daughter, and as a mother, I really feel that, and I really respect that. She's also got a brand called Diaz and Jay, and those are products that encourage self-care and wellness for men. So come on, man them. Scented candles aren't just for us women. Like, you guys need to look after your peace too. Put on a candle, take a little chill pill. Now, Sacha's life hasn't been easy, and she entered the world of work at just 16, whilst also homeless and living in hostels. So to go on to be a serial entrepreneur is quite an achievement. Her entrepreneurial journey began in 2016. She was actually a product manager in the tech industry at that time, and she moved on from there to launch her own recruitment consultancy, which is all around parental employment and flexible working. And that come about off the back of her own barriers and experiences as a single black mother, and I think many of us moms can relate. So in this episode, we discussed how having her daughter made her reconsider her own hair journey. We spoke about the detrimental impact on her self-worth of being rejected by her parents, making the decision to go it alone as a parent, realising who she thought was her dad wasn't her dad, and discovering who her actual dad was, and The Curly Bride, a black love story centering black love and talent in a wedding industry that lacks representation, and what it's like to build a brand as a black British woman who's come from struggle. Let's get into it. Hey Sacha, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
Are you ready to jump straight into a quick fire round?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, from the queen of satin bonnets, satin bonnet or satin pillowcase?
This is not a straightforward answer, but I guess bonnets.
Hair up or hair down?
This is not as easy as it seems. Down.
Wash and go or twist out?
Wash and go for me, personally.
Edges natural or edges laid?
Natural, because I don't even think I've ever done my edges, maybe twice in my whole life. So natural.
Wash day, a chore or a vibe?
Vibe, definitely.
Volume or definition?
Volume now, but it used to be definition.
Day one hair or day three hair?
3.
Diffuse or air dry?
Air dry. Can't even diffuse properly. The technique is too long. I can't do it.
Have you got any certified go-to products or accessories?
Obviously accessories, I'm going to say my own because they genuinely are. But in terms of like the bonnets and pillowcases, for example, as it starts to get warmer like now, I don't tend to like sleeping with stuff on my head. So the pillowcases become the go-to then. Headbands like this that just help me get my hair out of my face, because I do try to have it down as much as possible to stop the pulling and the breakage and stuff. In terms of brands that I really love, quite a few, but I really like Sultan Nichols, Almocado, black owned and natural, which is what I love. So yeah.
All right. And what about growing up? Did you have anyone that inspired you, like any curl icons or curl inspo?
No, you know what? I think in terms of hair inspiration when we were younger, we did have some. I feel like our age, 90s, we did have some like Mel B and Fiona from like Coronation Street and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We did very subtly, and actually I don't think we realised how important it was. It still wasn't enough either for it to be significant enough for us to then embrace our own hair, if that makes sense. So
yes.
No, in terms of that, I didn't see anybody and feel like they're my hair inspo, because I didn't want the curly hair. Right, I just wanted the straight hair. In terms of general inspiration, I get asked that question so much, and actually it sounds weird, but nobody's really inspired me in terms of like celebrity and stuff, because I found it very difficult to find someone that I can resonate with on all levels, that's come from struggle, that's British, that's Black British. I feel like that disconnect has kind of prevented me from latching on to, that person that's the inspo. There's definitely people that I absolutely rate and that bits of their journey or achievements have inspired me, but in terms of somebody that's inspired me, no. And I feel like I did like that growing up, actually. I think that, that was a big factor for me, is that I lacked a role model, whether that be a personal one or in the public eye. So
I think it was an interesting point that you made about there being people out there that were providing some degree of representation. Yeah. But I think that's a really important point, that like, despite the odd one or two that might have been out there, it's like the beauty standard as a whole, isn't it? So even if you're looking out and seeing someone that looks like you, it doesn't mean that you're thinking that that is like, that is what beauty is or anything.
No, and I think it wasn't strong enough to counter the narrative and the beauty standards. The few that we saw weren't strong enough. There weren't enough of them, and it wasn't intentional enough for us to pay attention as young girls and be like, oh, actually, why am I so hung up on straightening my hair when Mel B's got her hair curly or whatever? But actually, sometimes she did straighten her hair too. So I think it was just that whole, as you say, it's not the fact that we didn't have any at all, because we had a small amount. Us curlies had a small amount. Afro ones were probably less common. But it just wasn't a strong enough counter for the lack of representation for us then.
So what was your relationship like on a practical sense with your hair when you were younger? Who was the main person that was looking after it, and what did you used to do with it?
So this is where it's like a simple question and I have to get deep, because my childhood wasn't simple. Okay, so from I'll speak about before 16, because from 16 I became homeless and was in hostels and stuff. So then it was just pure independence. But from a young age, I spent a lot of time on with who I thought were my grandparents were, and they were Jamaican. So that had a large influence. And I saw a lot of relaxed hair with some curly perms, with maybe a small amount of natural hair, whereas a lot of us use similar products anyway for all of it. So it was just like the blue magic would still get slapped on, whether it was relaxed or whatever. So I think in terms of that aspect of my hair and the products that were there, that's where I was introduced to a lot of that, because my mum is mixed race, but she's Asian and white, so she's got straight hair. So obviously my products were different to hers. My products when I was early teens, before I left home, wasn't soft and free and gold and all of those all of those hair oils, and primary school was like 12 plaits all sectioned with the square party. It's like, and I actually had a lot of black and mixed race people in my primary school when I moved to Nottingham. So I'm from Sheffield originally, but we moved to Nottingham when I was 8. So it was, and Nottingham is very diverse, and you've got certain areas that's just pure black people, which I absolutely loved growing up, right? So our primary school, was probably majority black, actually, if I think about it now. So a lot of us had our braids and our twists and like 20 different colour bubbles in our hair and all that kind of, it was a whole vibe. Like it was, it was a really good experience in that regard. But yeah, in terms of like the early days, I guess the protective styles weren't termed as such when I was younger. It was just like, if I saw, you know, another girl at school that had a few twists or braids, I'd probably go home and say, I want the same style or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of like the product angle of, you know, when I was younger, the kind of products that I use. I suppose because of when I was younger, like when you're younger and your hair, well, my hair was a bit more European and softer. Obviously, I was younger. It was easier for the products to work on my hair then, if that makes sense. My hair wasn't, it was thick, but not super dense, and the curls were normal curl pattern, I guess, in terms of tighter than they are now, but not super coarse or thick. So I guess what's deemed manageable and not difficult, I suppose, is what how it was perceived. A lot of school photographs with the hair halo that my daughter now has. But yeah, you know, that hair halo was just a part of the school photos and school life. I don't think we ever came from school, did we, with our hair looking the same? Hopefully I've answered the question, but yeah, so that's kind of the journey there. And then of course when I left home, you know, when I was in the hostels and stuff, I couldn't afford anything, right? So I'm trying to think even when and where I got my hair products. I did, because I did my hair, but it would be legit go to Wilko's and get their cheap 39p gel, right? Because it was literally budget, because I think I was getting EMA for a period of time there, for about 6 months before I started work, because I started work when I was 16. So I had no money to buy hair products, right? So yeah, it was 39p gels from Wilko's, slick, the slick across the face, all of that kind of vibe. And then more towards later teens is when I started straightening. And the reason it took so long actually for me to start straightening it is because the straighteners were rubbish until yeah, exactly. So like I tried to straighten it a few times when I was younger, but it was the Babyliss with the steam. And obviously that was not straightening anything. It was making it curly, or it was making it something. It wasn't straight.
Crazy.
Some kind of it's pulled the curl pattern out, but it's just like Bosch basically. So then I'd say around like mid-teen, late teens is when we started to get those ceramics that we thought were so lit because they actually worked, because they were so strong, right? And the GHDs and all of that stuff. And that's when I just lived with straight hair, and I wouldn't go anywhere if my hair wasn't straight. So yeah, that was the start of the straightening, really. And
then how long did that go on for, and what took you back to your curls?
Forever. So that was late, so 17, 18, full on straightening, because the straighteners were there then, till after I had Jaya. So Jaya's 10 now. I'd say I didn't stop straightening. I slowed down on the straightening when she was about 2, because she came back from nursery and she wanted the same straight yellow hair as people at nursery. And I was just like, this can't run at all. Yeah. And I also can't be preaching to her when she's looking at me with my straight hair either. So at that point, and it was purely because of that, not because I wanted to embrace my natural hair, nothing to do with that. It was purely that, okay, I need to give her some representation. I need to be an example. I bought a load of books. I stopped straightening my hair as much. And that was why slowly I started straightening it. But of course it was mash up, because I've been straightening it for like years and years and years, and it was completely damaged. I also dyed it blonde every summer, right? So it was destroyed. So I say I wore it curly. Clearly it was not curls. It was like string, like straw. But yeah, I stopped straightening it as much. And then And I mean, like, I think about, so I used to sing and I used to perform at raves, right? And it was sweatbox nearly all the time. I don't know how, I just don't even know how I didn't get fed up with having to straighten it. And then the curls popping out around the edges anyway. Like, and
the minute you step into the club, just
it's like you couldn't even really have it out like that, or you might have tried. I did try, and then it ended up being slipped back and having to wrap it around in some kind of bun because it looked ridiculous, and I had to go on stage, right? So, so yeah, it was that journey. But literally, I would not, like, I cancelled nights out if I'd washed my hair and hadn't had time to straighten it, or it was very much, I could not stand my curly hair. And I remember I went to, it was Napa, I think. I was in Napa, and my hair got wet, and it was just like on the beach, everyone was like, oh my God. I was just like, yeah. Just looking back at pictures of myself, like, oh my God, I can't stand it. And everybody was just like, whoa. And surprisingly, because it was more resilient then, because obviously I was younger, the curls were quite tight there. And that was like, I was 21 then. Yeah. So, but yeah, I wasn't feeling it at all. So it's been a real journey in terms of like going from despising them to, God, I better do this for my daughter, to, right, it's actually so much better. Like having to straighten it. So yeah. That's what happened. A long, very long process. And the true time of when I truly started embracing natural hair and began that journey was when I launched Happy Hair. And that was 2018. And again, not intentional really. It was more doing it to learn, to inform the product development. So it was, it was really just, so the towel, when I was designing the towel, I needed to test it. I couldn't really afford to be paying people to test it, or we didn't have a presence there to be going asking influencers or whatever. In fact, influencers weren't even a thing then, but bloggers were. So I was like, right, well, I might as well just use the stuff on mine and Jaya's hair to see what works. So that's kind of where I then started to really dig in and start researching and following a few bloggers, and they started talking about towels. I stopped using it. I was like, So then I started to research it. And that is when, kind of by accident, my true healthy hair, natural hair journey started. And then when I started to discover so much more about certain ingredients and the reason my hair seemed like it would just frizz, because I thought it would just frizz because of all I'd done to it. And that wasn't it at all. Yes, of course, there was damage, but just even the towel aspect of it, just rubbing my head with this rough towel, and it never dawned on me that would be causing a load of the frizz, right? So yes, that's when my full proper natural hair journey started, like 2018. And that's when I started going periods of time without straightening, which is wild to me. When I think, at the time I was just like, I'm never going to be able to do this. There's no way. There's no way. I had to get rid of the straighteners because I knew, like, if the straighteners, I'm going to straighten my hair. So yeah, since then I've not owned a pair of straighteners. Threw them in the bin.
So it was like simultaneous then, you starting the business and coming to love your hair. In my head, I don't know, I thought it would have been like you came to a point of loving your hair before you got to the point of starting the business. Everybody
just thinks that, and I think it's because of how much I do now, or how much I have done since launching the business, is that that's all you guys have ever seen of me, right? Not just mine, but what I'm like with Jaya. So, but I think even I'm so full on with it with Jaya because of what I've said to you about the nursery. I think that it came from that. So actually the driving force that's really been what I really cared about was her, making sure she was okay with her hair, as opposed to you guys thinking it's me that came to a point of embracing my natural hair journey, if you get what I mean. And it's so crazy because I straightened Jaya's hair twice when she was younger. And honestly, I'm doing a post about this soon, but I had absolutely no right to straighten that child's hair, and it's just so common. And I'm never one to judge anybody's parenting or anyone's decisions, and actually a lot of the time it's just due to either ignorance or lack of knowledge as to why we do these things. But she asked for it, and I was like, okay, for your birthday. So I've created this whole special occasion You can straighten your hair for a special occasion. Like, I think about it now, and I'm just like, oh God. Like, but yeah, you know, just thinking about it now, I had absolutely no right to do that. You know, that could have damaged and changed her curl pattern forever, and we will not know now whether that had an impact on her hair or not, right? But yeah, it's just that those kind of experiences which has kind of led on to me being as I am. So especially when it comes to like healthy, like you know, I'm very big on ingredients, and it's not just about natural hair journey, it's about what we're using. So it absolutely was not me thinking, yes, I've got to this point, I've got to look for natural hair. No, that's not what happened. That was kind of a byproduct of launching this business, literally. But honestly, if Jaya never came back that day from nursery, I probably would never even be here and have embraced it even now. I don't know, because I was full on team straight. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, that's really powerful, like what the love of your daughter and her self-image can motivate you to do. Before, there's so much that you've already touched on that I'd like to just reach into a little bit if you can. So you mentioned that you were homeless and living in hostels. I can't imagine that would have been an easy time for you.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So were you working at the time, or?
So basically and just to let you know, I'm completely okay with talking about this, so ask away. I speak about it quite often now. So basically it was when I was about 13, I've always had a turbulent relationship with my mum. And it was me and my brothers that lived with her at that time. So she first kicked me out when I was about 13. But at that point, and you're going to ask me about this later, the person that I thought was my dad at that point is where I went. I was supposed to stay with him, but I ended up with who I thought were my grandparents, who I referenced a bit earlier. And then finally, because he was supposed to be buying a place for me to move with him, but he had a girlfriend and she had a daughter, and they were the priority at that point. And then he finally bought a house, and I got this box room. So the young girl, I think I was about 13 and she was about 6 maybe. And my memory is so sketchy with the detail of this stuff because I literally have suppressed it. Like I was speaking about this the other day. I suffer from memory, like retention and stuff, because I've suppressed so much stuff through trauma. Sometimes I don't even know whether memories are real or not, right? You know, like you get a bit of a flashback and you're like, I don't know if that actually happened. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, that is, so I had this box room. So they moved me into this box room. And when I say box room, it's not a box room. It was like a strip. I'm guessing it was for, I don't even know what the laundry room maybe. I don't know. It was upstairs, but you walk in and there's just a strip. There's no like square space. It was a really tiny room. So I had a blow up bed in that bedroom. That was my bedroom. And it was just awful, right? And then no freedom. So I couldn't go out, straight home from school, straight back. This was in Sheffield, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mention that. So I'd been kicked out and sent to Sheffield. And then that didn't last very long, basically. There was turbulence between me and his girlfriend. And when it came to the crunch, like her word was just more important than mine. So ironically, my mum came to get me in the end, and took me back home. But then for the next year or two, it was just more of the same. So as I was taking, just before I started taking my GCSEs, she kicked me out. But obviously the first option wasn't there anymore. So one of my school friends, her auntie or something like that worked at a hostel for minorities. I have to do the quotation of minorities because you know how I feel about these words. But basically worked at a hostel specifically for children like me, I guess. So they put me in there. So that was the start of the hostel journey. That was only up until a certain age, though. You know, one of those where it's kind of like you can only be there till you're 17 or 18. So whilst I was taking my GCSEs, I was living there. But there was always drama. And like, you watch Tracy Beaker, and even though it's not exactly the same, it's similar in some regard. Like, there's always drama, because you're still talking about, whether we're in a hostel or not, you're still talking about, you know, teenagers and people with drama over men and boys, should I say, and all that kind of stuff was happening in this building where there's about like 30 of us, right? Yeah, so then I took my GCSEs, did surprisingly well in the GCSEs on most of my subjects. And then it was time for me to leave there. But obviously I didn't have anywhere to go. The council weren't giving me anything. The housing associations weren't giving me anything. So I had to go to a company called Framework, but they put me in supported housing, and that is for drug addicts, alcoholics, like active drug addicts. So I had to go, it was a house share, which I shared with a couple of people that were drug addicts. So that was like the space that I was in. And whilst there was some freedom, because obviously I'd come out of the hostel environment, it was madness, because the people would steal my stuff, and there'd be madness happening in the crazy times in the morning, you know, because they needed to go and get some drug or whatever. It was pure madness, normalized for me, because I spent a lot of time in the hood in knots and stuff, so it was kind of normalized, but still like wild when you really think about it. Yeah, so that was that. I spent it might have been 2 years. Again, my memory is sketchy. Might have been a couple of years that I spent there. And then I got a council flat, which felt like a mansion. Like, it felt like, oh my gosh, it was not a mansion. But yeah, so then when I was about 20, when I was about 20, then I got the council flat. So I was there until I bought my house. I started working at Experience. So that, like, early 20s, once 20 came, early 20s, yeah, life was good in many respects, because my council rent was really cheap. I worked a decent job for my age and for my outgoings at that point. Then I started singing at 21. So I was getting paid for performances all over the country weekend. So that's the only time really in my life money was no problem. So that aspect of my life, early 20s to 20 to 23 ish, was nice. There was no, it was kind of coming from that mad turbulent time from early teens to then, so 10 years, say, really. And that 3-year window was good, and then more drama after. And then all different challenges after. So that has kind of been, the theme, which has influenced every aspect of me as a girl, as a woman, as a mom. You know yourself how much things as a young girl, teenage, early 20s, all different ages, have that lasting impact on you and, who you are going forward. So, yeah, that's kind of how it works with that.
And you mentioned about your dad and then discovering that he wasn't actually your dad.
Yeah.
How old were you at that stage?
So that was when... So Jaya was born in 2011. 2012 is when I found out. And at that time, so I've been a single mum since Jaya was about 10 months old. Mm-hmm. Very toxic relationship with her dad. Very traumatic pregnancy as a result of that. And then at 10 months, when she got to about 10 months, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I lost myself through that. She's got to have a family unit. She cannot be like me. That whole thing just consumed the whole thing, right? That mentality consumed the whole thing. Like, regardless of what he did, regardless of what I ended up doing, all of that stuff boiled down to she's got to have a family unit. Mm-hmm. Which meant I kind of lost myself in that process, because that's not me. That mentality before, that situation is not me. I was very feisty. Very angry because of all that had happened. But I hid all of this stuff from most people. as much as I'm casually like telling all this stuff to you right now, and I'm absolutely fine with it, that was not what it was like throughout my whole working career. Afterwards, when I was in the paper and stuff, speaking about some of my experiences, I had so many colleagues contact me and be like, what? Like, how on earth were you going through all of that stuff? Nobody knew anything. I just used to completely...
What sort of things were you saying?
So that was more, it was like a letter to my younger self in The Guardian was the main one. So that was kind of just talking about, some of the challenges, how some of those things have been able to contribute to me being an entrepreneur. Because obviously there's a lot of skills that came through having to hustle and do that stuff by myself that's helped me as an entrepreneur, right? So yeah, a lot of the colleagues would contact me like, you know, how the hell were you going through that stuff literally as you were working with me? And I'm just like, I didn't tell anybody. A couple of my close friends knew, probably because they saw the stuff themselves, but I didn't tell anybody. So, so I internalized it. And basically, I was just angry. You know, when I think back to teens, early 20s, I guess you would just say that I was that stereotype of a black girl from Knots that, you know, just hood. And I guess in some ways I am what people would consider a stereotype in that regard. But now you know what it came from. Like, that's what it came from. It was a lot of anger, a lot of feeling completely unworthy, like rejected by both parents. I thought it was some of that at that point. Just like, and that fueled a person who, it just wasn't fair. I just didn't get the opportunity to become who I was going to become without all of that, if that makes sense. You know, as much as it's stuff you have to take ownership for and of at a certain point in your life, because it isn't going anywhere and people aren't going to do it for you, it still isn't fair. So, you know, a lot of who I was and that attitude and that faciness and that savage, like, I was savage back then, you know, no forgiveness. I'm still trying to learn to be forgiving now, because once somebody harms me, it just brings it, like, you know, I feel it's very personal for me. So, so I'm talking about that because obviously being like that, you can imagine that when it came to boyfriends and stuff, I didn't take no nonsense. I didn't take any rubbish. The amount of guys that used to try and run me down, I was so feisty back then. I used to have guys on my phone, and I was just like, no, I wouldn't give people the time of day, or, you know, just that's what I was like. So then the fact that I ended up with Jaya's dad, like the kind of person he is, even looks-wise, and it seems really shallow, but he isn't my type at all, right? And my boyfriends were very good-looking, hood but good-looking, and that was just who I attracted and who I was attracted to because of my circumstances and who I was and where I lived, you know, when I was younger. And it just wasn't that. But at that point in life, I think I was also, as much as I was feisty and a bit cocky, at that point, I started to try and get a bit deep and be like, stop being so shallow with these pretty boys. You know, they're not doing anything for you, right? And that's kind of the mentality that I was in at that point, mixed with that still constant unworthiness, right? So I think there's something to be said. When your parents reject you, you can't really get much deeper than rejection from your parents in terms of your self-worth. I don't think people really understand that. Like, if your parents, who are supposed to be, if nobody loves you on this earth, your parents do, right? That's just, it's supposed to be like that, and it's a very natural thing. If they do not, you can't, well, me personally, that completely shattered any idea that I was worthy. Because if my parents that aren't bothered or aren't interested, and actually quite the opposite a lot of the time, that completely was ingrained into my whole thought process, right? And my whole view of how I saw myself. So even though I was very feisty and very stush with these guys, the underlying thing is that when they did get through the barriers and stuff, I was trying to fill the hole, right? I was just trying to fill the hole with these people. Then I was chatting to too many guys at that point. It was so unhealthy and toxic, but I didn't know what was happening. So then when I've met Jaya's dad, that is the reason why he got any of my time, because of all of that. And then me getting to a point where I'm like, I think I'm trying to not be as shallow. But actually, it just wasn't anything to do with that, really. You know, it was just, I got to a point where I just wanted to be with somebody. And I guess use the excuse of not being so picky to just start talking to him. But and that is literally, I look at it now, because I was just so stush. So I actually laughed to myself, like how I ended up with him and the kind of person that he was, more than anything, as in addition to the looks. But it just makes me laugh, because I just know maybe a year or two, even before I met him, there's absolutely no way. Not only would he not have been able to speak to me, right? I would never have tolerated or accepted anything he did. There's just no way in hell. There's just no. And that's why a few people that like lost touch with me during that period and then came back to see who it was and what he was doing, they were just like, how?
Similar story. I've got a
really?
story. Yeah, prior to Kane.
Really?
I'll come on the podcast soon. But yeah. I feel you so deeply on this.
Honestly, so it was like, and what a lesson of the person that I feel like, in a shallow way, but in terms of his personality too, and what he did, and he changed me as well. As much as I got myself back in many ways, that experience destroyed parts of me that I don't think I'll ever get back. And I accepted stuff I'd never accepted in my life before, right? And the fact that I felt like I was not being as shallow and that I was leaning to, literally, it's ridiculous. Like, he's the worst one of any of my exes, and there's been some bad ones. So that's how it ended up being. So I was lost in the source of she's got to have a family unit, and then something switched. And that is very common with me, is that I might like be lost or fuzzy or roped in by something that maybe pulled on my trauma or whatever. But when my head switches and something, that's it. There's no coming back from that. So then the switch flipped, and then I was like, what the actual hell am I doing? What is going on here? And why am I letting this guy know? So that was that. I was like, get out. I'll just raise my kid. I'm doing it by myself anyway. I'm paying for everything myself, and I'll just do it myself. Bye. So that was when she was 10 months old. But the unfortunate thing about that was that at the same time is when I found out about my dad. So about 2 months after. At the same time, I went back to work after maternity leave. So this was, what a time for all of that to be happening. Mm-hmm. So basically, I had so I kicked him out, and then I started about 2 months, I started doubting myself, no, oh no. And then the family unit thing started coming back. And then the thing with my dad. And then I was like, I had a little bit of a wobble. Thankfully, the wobble didn't last long. But the person who ended up being my dad is my mum's ex. So I know who he was. And the strange thing is, ever since I was a little girl, he'd been in my ear telling me he's my dad from I was small.
Really?
Right? But in such a weird, inappropriate way, because I was a kid. Right, it would just because my mum wouldn't speak to him about it, so he used to come try and get through me. But I've got her saying he's a trouble causer, he's got problems. Just ignore what he's saying. But he would never give up, and I'd see him every few years. Right, so earlier when I'm talking when I was a young girl, so the person that I thought was my dad was still on the scene at that point. So I'd see him then, and he'd tell me that he was my dad when I've still got one. As a young girl, so that was just traumatizing. I ended up crying. I didn't want to be around it. I couldn't stand this guy. I was just he freaked me out. So every few years I'd see him, and the last time before we found out that he actually was, I was this feisty teenager that I've just been telling you about, living in. I think I was staying with somebody. I don't know, something might happen at the hostel, I don't know. But, sorry, the supported housing. But basically, at that point, I was still in supported accommodation anyway. And he popped up like he always does, because what he does is he used to just pop up at my mum's house every few years. And they were okay, they were civilized, like quite friendly. And the conversation would always end up going to him trying to drop it. And I'd just be like, can you just not? Like, it's weird. But he came to me when I was a teenager this time. So it'd been about, I don't know, 5 years since the time prior. Yeah, he wasn't ready for trying to come with that talk at that stage of my life. I cussed him. I just cussed him, and I just let realize, like, if you come and chat to me about this one more time, I swear. And I just absolutely cussed him, and he got to know a bit about me, because obviously he didn't know me. But I was ghetto as hell then. You have to understand that I was surviving. Mm-hmm. I was surviving. I was living with drug addicts, so I had all of the stuff that comes with living in certain areas, and the rivalry with some girls, and like just that whole conditioning of your circumstances and things that are normalized, and like your boyfriend's being murdered and all of that stuff. Yeah, that's normalized because it becomes just how we grew up. I went through all of that, and then this guy's just come back after a few years and like tried to say, I just wasn't having it. So he didn't like that. So then it was a good few years, and then the next time I heard from him was when Jaya was just born, and he sent me a message on Facebook and said, I heard you've had a baby. Apparently he's gone to my mum's like he always does every few years, and just as he's about to leave, you have to understand that she knew this whole time, right? Or at least knew there was a possibility. So just before he's leaving, she's like, I don't know if you saw the picture, or she said, here's my granddaughter. And he's like, whose child? And mentioned my brother. She's like, no, Sacha's. And then this guy obviously thinks he's my dad, right? So he's like, so Sacha's had a child. So in his head, he's thinking, what, nobody's told me. And I'm like, why the hell would anybody be telling you, right? So, yeah, he's messaged me on Facebook, and he's just said, he heard about the baby. He wants to take us out for lunch and stuff. And at that point, I was much calmer. Because I was like, 25 at that point. But I just said to him, if you want to take me out for lunch, you could take all my brothers, my mom, everyone. Just take us all, because I just didn't want to be with him by myself, because I already knew what was coming, right? So I was like, you just take us all out then. And he was like, okay. So we all went for lunch, and then went back to my mum's afterwards. Sure enough, the conversation ended up going there. And at the time, Jaya was in nursery, and I'd had some drama with work about they wouldn't let me go back on the hours that I'd asked for, something like that. Yeah, the usual. So there was something to do with me not being able to afford or struggling with Jaya's nursery fees at the time. And he just decided to announce, I'll pay for Jaya's nursery fees. And I was just like, here we go. I just knew I was just like, why would you do that then? Why would you pay for my daughter's nursery fees? And he's just like, because I'm in a position to. And I was like, yeah, all right then. So anyway, at the time, but he was, banging on about it. And the wildest thing, I called Jaya's dad to ask him if he was okay with this guy paying for Jaya's nursery, right? Don't ask me why I felt like I needed to have that level of respect to ask him whether it's okay or not, because he didn't give me nothing. But at that point, he's like, who's this Don? Who is this guy asking me? And why does he want to pay for Jaya's nursery? And then after that, he was like, yeah, if you want. So I was like, yeah, obviously you don't mind somebody paying for Jaya's nursery. But anyway, so that was that. So I was like, I'll think about it. Because the reality is I needed the help at that point. So I was just like, I might. But accepting help's always been a challenge for me. So anyway, he started mentioning a couple of things, and I was just like, swerve. Every time I mentioned it, I was just like, swerve. And then he messaged me after, it might have been the same day or after I'd left the house anyway, gone back to mine. Still in the council flat at that point. But trying to get on the housing list because she started walking and it was tiny, it was only 1 bedroom. And he was like, oh, I know you don't like talking about this, but would you be willing to get a DNA test to just put this to bed? And I was like, you know what? Yes. Because this guy is, I'm not going to swear, but he's peeing me off. I was literally at that point, and as I said to you, I'd grown a lot at that point, and I'd become a mother, obviously, so that's changed me. And I was just bored of this guy just banging on. So
was there any resemblance between you, like physical resemblance?
No, I don't look like anybody. And some people might say otherwise. Not many people have seen him to know whether we do or not. But so his mum, people say that I've got similarities to his mum, the freckles. So she was born in Jamaica, but she's got Chinese and Portuguese and all sorts. Black, of course, but the mix of Chinese and Portuguese. So some people say that, you know, there is some kind of resemblance, but not to me. But I think even if I looked the spit of him, I would never want to admit it at that point anyway. So no. So personally, I don't feel like it was definitely not a situation where it was undeniable and we don't know how it was, you know, not known this whole time. Definitely not that kind of situation. However, he is red skin. I am much lighter than all of my siblings, apart from one, right? But now it makes sense because he's red skin and my brother's dads are dark. So that's it really. So I remember going to my mum's just casually like, I'm just going to give this guy's DNA test, you know, because he's just doing my head in. And that's the first time that I realised there might be some truth to what he's saying, because her face just dropped. And then she started with all that, and I was just like, and I looked at my brother and we just looked at each other and we was like, okay. But I wasn't vexed, I wasn't angry. I was not angry because I think because I'd done so much and I'd experienced so much, and she was, when she had me, similar age to what I was then, right? So I had that, I guess it's empathy you could call it, for what I've done some madness because of my circumstances and because of how I felt. So I can't really judge her for, that was my thought process at the time. I'm not trying to judge her for something that she did at, you know, an age that I've been and have struggled with or whatever. So I wasn't looking for any kind of revenge or anything like that. I just wasn't angry about it. I just wanted to get this guy off my back. And at that point, when I said I was going to get the test, obviously I didn't think he was anyway. So I just like, I'm just going to shut him up. Well, obviously it came back that he was. And it is literally, it's just very surreal because you only see it on TV with DNA tests. But yeah, it came through on an email, if I remember correctly, 99.9999. I was like, this is long. That's all I remember. This is so long. I can't even stand this guy. He's so annoying. I was just like, oh, for God's sake. That was literally my response, for God's sake. So it was just like, so then I remember texting my mum and saying, so I've got the results. And she was ignoring me. She didn't want to respond to me. And I just kept messaging her. And then she finally came back, but she just abused me. She just went mad. And I was like, that's when I got angry. I was like, are you actually joking? Are you actually joking? And I just switched. And then we didn't speak for about, at that point, we didn't speak for, it might have been a couple of years, 2-3 years or something like that. So that's how I found out. And he ended up being toxic too. So that was like, that's the worst thing, is the... So I had one parent that was toxic, and then the other one was, and then I found out actually he wasn't my dad anyway, but then the next one was. So it's just like, Jesus Christ. But the good thing is, I've never, I say good, but it has been for me. Fortunately, I've never had that need for a dad. I've never really desired and really had that thing. You know, a lot of people really do feel the whole of their dad not being there. And it just wasn't there for me. So when I found out that Mark wasn't, I was like, okay. And then when I found out he was, I was like, but I was okay. I was literally, it was an inconvenience. And I know it affected me. This is not me saying it didn't affect me. Of course it affected me, and more than I physically realized. But fortunately, not in the way of, oh my goodness, like, you know, that whole bond, fatherhood bond. I have never had it. So that protected me a little bit.
I just get a sense that we've only really scratched the surface.
I know, you haven't got enough time in this podcast for my life.
Trying to fit into one episode what I've been in so far in about like 8 or something, and I'm like, oh, there's so many questions. We could just go into this and we could just go into that. But what I'm interested to know is like how you used a lot of that pain and resilience and that having to be independent and having to fend for yourself, and you know, now you've got your daughter. Like, how do you muster all that you can using all that you've been through to propel you onto your entrepreneurial journey?
Everything I do is driven by survival, and that's a double-edged sword. It's a good thing because it helps me just crack on, because my life has never been easy. Apart from that 3-year window that I told you that everything was okay, it's been very difficult. And there's been many times, I don't mind saying that there's been many times I just wish I wasn't here, and just thought it would be better if I wasn't here, you know, and how the hell am I supposed to do all this stuff? But that survival mechanism always kicks in. So in that respect, and that still is here right now. And, you know, any challenge that I experience now, financial, motherhood, business related, it all stems back to that survival mechanism. So that is what essentially gets me, you know, carrying on and operating as I do and raising Jaya and doing what I do, what you see today. But equally, there's a lot of things about me that I don't like, that is a result of this trauma. I'm very woke, I guess, in terms of myself these days. And I've been able to revisit a lot of that trauma and look at it now, but there's still a lot of it that affects me so much in who I am now and who I've been, that I don't feel like I can ever change, that it still gets to me, if that makes sense. So fortunately, I'm in a position, and I'm at an age now, 35, old, where I just can't even listen. I'm literally at that point now where I'm just like, oh my God. If I go to a rave, I am the old woman in the rave. Like, that is so sad. That is that is so sad. But anyway, yeah, but basically that is it is the survival mechanism. And I think I know that as much as I can talk about this, and I promise you, I'm not acting like I'm casual. This is literally, I don't mind. I am very casual about speaking about this stuff, and I'm very disconnected from it. And that's why it's so easy for me to talk to you about it right now. But I know I'm disconnected from it. And I know that the stuff that's happened should have affected me more than it did. But I know it has, if that makes sense. It's like, even just one of the things that we've kind of touched on, or that we haven't touched on today, might have been enough to break me, you know. But even though it's great that it didn't, I also know that I've been disconnected from the trauma in a way, because I've been surviving instead, that it's damaged me. It sounds a bit weird, if you get what I mean. It's even though I'm acknowledging it now, and I look back at everything that's happened, and I'm speaking about it, I'm not hiding it, I'm not hiding from it, I'm still disconnected, you know. And I do think that is literally still that survival mechanism, you know. Even though I would love to tell you that I've gone to, you know, revisited that whole experience, even with finding out who my dad was, and that I've, you know, cried and been emotional about it and got over. No, I haven't, you know. It was just like, the thing that annoys me the most, well, not annoys me, but the thing that bothered me and hurt me the most about that is that I ended up letting him in to a degree, and then him doing me over, because I was just like, you know, that was my thing, is that I never let anybody help me, and I never let anybody in. But again, I was like, Jaya should know her granddad. That's what it was. I was like, and I literally said to him, like, I ain't what a dad, I'll keep it real with you, but you can be a granddad to my daughter. That's what I said to him. And he was like, okay, that's cool. But then he just ended up doing me over. And that's where the start, I think that's another thing, is that it's also overlapped. Like, my main challenge in life has always been money, debt, financial is my biggest challenge. It still is today, always has been, ever since that 3-year period where I was okay. And he contributed to that massively. And I think the overlap of it as well, that's what I'm more bothered about. That's what affects me the most when I think about what he did in his situation, that whole situation with him. When I think about it, the things that I refer back to most is like the financial aspect, that he ended up putting me in debt. Not the fact that I didn't even know this guy was my dad, you know, a year or whatever before. So yeah, it's a very strange place to be so aware and so authentic in yourself, as I am. You already know I keep it very real, like there's nothing pretentious about what I'm saying or what I do. But equally, it's a difficult place to be in when you're so disconnected from it. You know, it's I am grateful for it in terms of day to day, because I can function and get on with stuff when I shouldn't be able to. But sometimes when that day comes when I'm overwhelmed or I just like break down or whatever, and it probably is because of all this stuff that I'm just suppressing, right? It probably isn't because of what's happened and what's tipped me over the edge, the actual thing. It probably is just to do with all the stuff that I've been suppressing. But I'll be real with you. Who cares when you've got to raise a daughter by yourself? Like, it doesn't matter. Obviously it matters, but at the end of the day, nobody thinks, oh, Sacha's got, you know, been through that, or she's going through that, and then change is what I've got to do. Yeah. Nobody does that. Do you get what I'm saying? It's I've still got to raise this 10-year-old by myself. I've still got to try and navigate me having meltdowns around the 10-year-old. Like, so it doesn't matter.
Who's supporting you?
Nobody. And it's that is the thing for me, is that I think it's one of those situations where I think you can get through most things if you've got people. Yeah. It's everybody's got different challenges, and some are very hard. You know, you've been through stuff that I couldn't get through, and vice versa. But when you've got people with you, you can get through it. And I think that's been the thing with me, is that the people that I'm supposed to have with me have been the ones causing most of it. And it's a very difficult thing to live with. And also not a difficult thing to live with. It's shaped my personality. And those bits about myself that I've told you that I'm not too keen on, that I feel like are deep rooted, as much as I can, you know, improve myself, and I always will. There's certain things that I just think are me now. And it is that situation where it's nice having Jaya at this age, actually, because we just have girly days sometimes, and without knowing it, she is the support in some ways. But a lot of the time I need the support from the motherhood, because I need to go and just fall apart by myself and be myself, you know. She's not seen her dad now for, it's coming up to 3 years in August. Yeah, so there's navigating her through that and me through that, because it hardly did anything when he was about, but then for him to be completely gone for 3 years is made some difference. And then I don't have a relationship with any of my parents. She does a little bit.
How does that impact how you parent Jaya then, when you've already experienced rejection, and then how does that impact like the narrative of what's going on with her dad? How do you sort of address that with her?
I'm very real with Jaya now. I protected her for a long time, and she had no idea what her dad was like until this 3-year situation. Because he basically, without going into another drama, basically something happened where, mainly for safety purposes and just so she had a certain awareness, I had to break some stuff down to her and get a bit real without being the mum that slags off the dad, because I definitely didn't want to be that. I had to tell her some truths, and she couldn't believe it. and she was of an age where she understood that means he's a bad person, then from her own perception of those decisions equate to you know.
Rather than you actually saying he's bad.
I didn't,
look, this is the circumstances.
Yes, I was very focused on making sure I did not influence her decisions or perceptions. I just told her facts. I just told her, this is what's happened, this is what's been happening. And then she was like, so then she came to herself. The challenge has been, so then she starts asking questions about where my dad is, because she's like, all of a sudden she's realized, hang on, my mum obviously has to have a dad. Where is he? Who is he? Like, so then sometimes she starts to ask certain questions, you know, over those few years, which I've had to have a little bit of conversation with her. And then I think that the most difficult thing has been being the mom that I am. I'm very strict, right? But I'm very loving. And, you know, in terms of her development and her identity and everything, I am so proactive. Like, she is so purposeful. Everything I do is very intentional as a mom in all regards. And that's just come from me doing the absolute opposite of what I had and saw. But being the mom that I am and not having a relationship with my mom, she was like, what's going on here? You know, like, hang on a minute. And also the respect aspect. I'm telling her that I'm your mom and you absolutely need to respect me. And, you know, mothers are, you know, the great beings and they are the person that's there for you in the world. But hang on, Mom. You don't even chat to yours. It's like, you know, she didn't say that, but it was that popped in her head, like, oh, actually, you know, she doesn't talk to Nana, or, you know, whatever. So that's been the difficult thing, and that's where I have had to either get real with her or let her see certain things. Now it's easier because I have to say a damn thing. She will just see stuff herself and she will just either comment on it herself or she'll just be like, yeah, I'm not feeling that, right? And because of this whole family unit thing, she just speak to them. Like, she goes to Nana's if I take her. So I have to they live in Notts. Obviously, I'm in Manchester now. But if I take her there, she will spend some time there. You know, she speaks to them now and again. So that she has a relationship with them, and I've got 4 brothers, so, you know, she's got her uncles. They don't make a lot of effort with her, but she makes effort because she wants to have connections to people. But obviously she sees certain things and she hears how her nana speaks either about her kids or in general life, and she's not feeling it. You know, her own views of the world, and even just down to work ethic, you know, she has got her own opinions now and she's starting to voice them. So it's easier now, you know, navigating through that, because actually it's more me just having a chat with her. If she wants to express something, it is literally just me keeping it real and letting her say what she, you know, what her view is. But in terms of the support, I think I've ended up having to do what I never wanted to do and just let her know sometimes when I'm struggling. And that's something I didn't really want to do, but actually I don't feel like protecting them all the time and acting like everything's okay is the best way. I just don't. I think if you can do that and it's healthy for everybody, that's fine. But if there's certain times where they're old enough and they need to know certain things, then I'm letting them know, because that's what it has to be. And, you know, she has, as much as she's the sweetest child, she's never known struggle. You know, the house that she grew up in was the house that I ended up buying, which was the 4-bedroom house. So she's had to be humbled a couple of times. We've moved around a lot since then. When I sold the house, you know, and I remember her looking at the houses when we were looking for places to rent when I was going to sell the house. She's looking, she's like, it's only got 1 bathroom. I'm like, you are crazy. You ain't got a clue. Yeah, we got an absolute clue. But she's been super resilient. But yeah, in answer to your question, it is just keeping it real with her. But I do feel I've just been robbed of the mum that I could have been. I did a post about this the other day and I had so many messages like, oh my God, like people started crying when they read it because it hit so deep. And it is literally because of my parents and because of my experience, I've been robbed of the mum that I could have been. Even though I am a very good mum and I've been very intentional in terms of my parenting, I am still not the mum that I would have been if I had support and if I had loving parents. That's just facts. So that's just the reality of it. And it's you just, as I said to you before, you can think about it, but there's nothing that can be done about that. So yeah, all I do is, I guess it's overcompensating in some ways because I know what she hasn't got and what I didn't have, and the fact that she would love to have two parents. She definitely feels the hole. She's got a hole in terms of her dad, and I know it's there. And we have chats sometimes, but she's got attachment. She displays some attachment stuff, and she can be quite needy sometimes, and that all stems from that. So I'm fully aware of that. But it is what it is. I can't control the kind of parent that somebody else is to my daughter. Unfortunately, that's just exactly how it is. And I also can't enable certain behaviors and a lack of regard and love for her just so she has a dad. I think that message is very dangerous too. So, I'm just I guess because of my experiences, I'm very aware and very conscious of any decisions that I make in parenting for sure.
Do you have any sort of practices that you do together or anything in terms of helping to keep yourselves mindful, or things that you do together to de-stress, anything like that?
Yeah, we do meditation and stuff sometimes, but I'll be honest with you, I don't spend as much quality time with Jaya as I don't know if should's the right word, but as I would like. Mm-hmm. And the main reason for that is because I'm always on survival mode. I'm very scared of not working. I'm very scared of not working because of the money situation. It's always in me. I had to force myself to have a break from Instagram and from work the other month. One, because I was burnt out, but two, I literally sat there like mum guilt crying, and I was like, you know what, right? You sat here bawling because you every time you speak to her, obviously we have like an hour or something when she comes back from school, bits and bobs where we're having conversation, we're having dinner, whatever. But around that, majority of the time I am working, right? And it's just that whole, because I'm scared not to. And who the hell else is going to do it? Literally that. So we the things that we do is that we'll go and get in the car and we'll have a music vibe. That's something that's easy to do, and that is like quite instrumental in our relationship. She's very similar to me in many respects, and she loves music, and she loves old school music, and she loves like new music too, right? So we've got that in common. So we'll just go and drive, whether it's down to Trafford Centre or along, somewhere further, and we'll vibe in the car. So that's something that we do. Meditation sometimes. She launched her own products and stuff. So there are, a few different things that we do. But it's something that I'm working on in terms of dedicated quality time. Especially outside, that we're trying to go on walks and stuff like that. But it's hard for me, It's actually hard for me. It's nothing to do with her. It's purely because I'm scared. Like, it's fear and survival. It just keeps roping me in. Like, I just feel like I need to be doing stuff all the time. So yeah, that's that's.
How do you even find the time to be? Because I see you, your new businesses that you set up, and I'm like, this woman is doing all of this by herself with a daughter who she's also showing how to be entrepreneurial. And how do you even find the space in your brain for creativity when you've got so much going on?
It's the opposite. My brain is filled with the creativity and the rest is secondary. And that's probably a lot of me making sure it's that way. Or my subconscious making sure it's that way. But even the new businesses, I have, and it is a blessing. I can't, you know, it is a blessing that I'm blessed with. I'm very innovative, have ideas constantly. I've always got ideas. But it's also very draining. But every time I have a business idea, don't get it twisted, a lot of it is that survival. Like, I've got to, oh my God, I need multiple streams of income, or at least a chance to have multiple streams of income, because like we could be homeless. And that's not, a lot of it is not unfounded. Like, I had to sell the house, and then I live with my friend for about 3 months. Like, who the hell wants to have to do that? You're like in your 30s, having to live with your friend. Fortunately, my friend was completely okay with us doing that, but nobody wants to do that, and I definitely didn't want to show that to Jaya. So, you know, so it's that fuels everything. It's that the homelessness, the fear, like the struggle and survival, all of it, the money, the financial stuff, it just drives everything. It literally dictates like everything I do, even down to the businesses. So when I decide, at the moment I've got like 4 brands, and even like this week I'm trying to start securing an investor, because I just want to level up, and I know I haven't got the skill set to do it, and I also am a Black businesswoman, so it's not designed for me to be able to take my brands to the level that they should be, right? So even that, like this week, I'm like, you need to start scaling one of them back, because how are you going to do it all? And I can't do it all, and that's the reality of it. I do a lot, but I can't do it all. But again, it's still coming from that whole, I need 4 brands, so that if one of the brands is not bringing any money in, then I might have some from the others. And that is literally, that's what drives it most of the time. Of course, it's still, you know, business ideas and acting on those. And definitely if it feels a need for people that will help people, I just want to pursue it. But the foundations, if I'm keeping it completely real, is always to do with that survival. And just trying to figure out ways and hustle. It's the hustle. It is literally the hustle, trying to find ways to make sure we're okay. And I speak about trying to go from survival to thriving all the time. But even though that is the goal, it often feels outside of my reach. So that is why I'm literally, it's actually unhealthy in terms of all the stuff I do. You know, it is, I don't ever go and preach about everybody should do that. And actually I was a guest speaker on something not long ago where I was saying the amount of work I do is unhealthy. But as I said to you earlier, who's going to do it for me? You know, it's that situation like where I'm literally doing it because there isn't an alternative. So yeah, it's there's always like pros and cons to every situation. Like, it's obviously there's a lot of benefits to be even just being able to launch 4 brands, you know, and having the skill set on minimal resources, and having, you know, the commercial acumen that I've been able to develop from working so young to do it. But of course that's offset by that I'm a workaholic and that I work far too much than is healthy.
Do you ever find time for reading? Are you into books?
I am into books, and that is something that I've been trying to really get back on, because it's got double benefits. It gets me reading and it stops me working for a bit. So the first lockdown, I bought about 5 books, and I've only just started reading them. I think I read 1, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better because, sorry. I was just going to say I'm getting better at the reading, because when I start reading a book and I enjoy it, I get that feeling back, because I've loved reading from a young age. So then it helps me.
Do you ever try audiobooks? Because I find that, because trying to find the time where you can just sit and read undisrupted is one thing, isn't it? So I do try and listen to audiobooks as well, but then I find like my mind starts wandering, and then I have to rewind the book because I'm like missing bits.
Exactly. Well, the one audio book that worked for me was Akala's, right? So I had the book, but every time I picked the book up, I got distracted or I got pulled into something. But I really wanted to read it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the audiobook. And in that instance, it worked really well. And actually, I felt it was better because I did read about half the book, but just hearing him speak the words was much more powerful. It resonated much more. However, I tried to go and before that, I tried one before. I think it was Think and Grow Rich, something like that. Oh my God. I was listening to it. I was like, oh. This is so
voice. Right.
I was like, no, I can't do this. No. So for me, I think, audio was a good, like when you're trying to like force it and, you know, you're making it a bit more realistic and doable. But I think you should be reading a book. I feel like reading should be a book. Yeah. I just feel like we're supposed to be reading the whole. No, and also a lot of us are just supposed to be coming away from technology. A lot of us need to get away from the technology and read the damn book. So doing the audio book is kind of like counterproductive, right? So, but no, reading, it does help. And actually, Jaya is obsessed with reading, which also helps because she's got her time where she's reading, which means sometimes I have a little bit of time. Not to necessarily have time to myself, but, you know, I don't feel guilty that I'm not doing something with her or engaging when she's lost in a book. So, yes, books are the way.
Have you got any favourite books or any books that have like made a significant impact that spring to mind?
That Akala book, Natives, was huge. I think it's I've also got Black and British, and I got Jaya the child's version, which we kind of read most of it together. But it's so hard to read books about racism in these times. It's like I literally can't read them right now because I'm already like destroyed from what's actually happening right now and drained, exhausted beyond belief, to then go and read a book about the same. Yeah, so it's which is unfortunate because a lot of those books is what I want to be reading. But the Akala one, I loved it. I think it was just one of those important books where I feel like you've got to read it. Mallory Blackman was my favourite author when I was growing up. So I bought a few of those for Jaya to read. Just having a black author, I think that she's the one that stuck with me when I was younger because I don't think I ever saw a black author other than her. But yeah, in terms of like books that I love, I don't do it enough these days to tell you that there's books that I love. I read I'm Not Your Baby Mother recently.
Okay, Braithwaite's book.
Yeah. But it was an interesting read. I enjoyed it. I think it's one of those where I didn't agree with everything that was in there, but it didn't matter because there were some bits that resonated. It was British, so you could kind of get a feel for it, and that was a good book, and that didn't take me too long to read. Even read that in the bath sometimes. That's why it's getting deep when you start reading books in the bath instead of being on your phone or instead of actually just sitting there and chilling. So yeah, but no, reading for sure is something that I'm trying to lean into more to stop me working. And to start reading it.
Space, man.
Yeah.
Anything that you've got going on that you want to plug or shout out?
God, so what haven't I got going on? Yeah, I think so. One of the brands, the Curly Bride Company, we've got some style shoots coming up. One of them I'm trying to do, and I say trying because it's not as easy as it should be. I'm trying to do a 100% black owned shoot. So everything, all the models, all the vendors, all the venues, every aspect so the style shoot is a photo shoot where you've got like the dressed up as brides and stuff. I'm trying to do a 100% black owned one, and it's called A Black Love Story. But I'm basically doing it in a way of it's modest. Like for us, it's outside the yard food shop. It's going to the hair shop. It's the salon. But this guy sees her and knows she's the wife to be already, but it's in our settings, and I've not seen that before. And I was like, this is going to be really special. But I want every single thing Black love, but Black love even behind the scenes. So right now, I'm just trying to get the rest of the vendors together for that. I've finalized the female lead model today. Still looking for the male one. But yeah, that I'm very excited about that. And then I've got 2 other shoots that I'm trying to do for that. And just that whole space in representation in the wedding industry, like most places, is scarce. But because it's high end as well, I've literally, again, we haven't got time for these conversations, but I'm trying to not be the face of this brand because it will hurt the brand. And that's, I'll be honest with you, that's facts. Because of where I want the brand to be and the kind of brand I want it to be, very opulent, very high end, people will judge it based on me. So I've got to take it, like, I've tried to be invisible with it, but because I can't afford to hire people yet, I've not been able to do that. I've had to get involved. But mark my words, as unfortunate as it is, as soon as I'm able to, I'm going to be completely behind the scenes with that brand, because it's one of those brands where they just won't see it as high end or accept it as high end or pay the money for the products that's deserving if they know that I own it.
That makes me sad. That makes me really sad.
It's sad, but again, it's facts. It literally, it is so true. I've had similar experiences even with Happy Hair, when people realized that I was the brand owner of one that had, like global customer base, or a certain celebrity had referenced. Then they realize it's me that owns it, and they're just like, oh. I'm just like, okay, that's cool with this one. But with that one, I've realized, unfortunately, the sad truth, but it is the truth, is that I will have to be more behind the scenes. It's already impacted it a little bit. People realizing that I own the Curly Bride company, because when I created the Instagram for it, and I don't know if I reshared it on Happy Hair, but I didn't say it was mine. And a load of people went for it, and I got loads of emails and stuff. And since then, a few people have realized it's mine, and the perception is different. So yeah, it just needs to be, they just don't want to pay that money for when it's the brand that belongs to somebody like me. That, you get what I'm saying? It's just that's just what it is. I think they only associate that with rich white people, and they think that they started that way. Well, some of them did, but they feel like, these Vogues and everything started as Vogue, as these huge brands. And no, some of them did because they had the money from the start, but these brands were unknown at one point. But people don't look at it like that, and they're not used to seeing people that look like us owning brands like that and having products that cost that amount. And it's not wild money, but just for example, like, we've got a afro comb, which is handcrafted, it's resin, it's got real botanicals in there, it's a really decorative piece. We've got crystals and pearls on some of them, and it's so funny, like, when people first saw it, they were going mad over it. And then I just knew, I was thinking, when you see the price of these, because I don't know what price they thought, but I already knew when they saw the price that they were, the enthusiasm was going to go. They're like between 20 and 30 pounds. But it's a decorative piece. Like, for me, it's not wild, but obviously, if you're in the mindset of this is who's selling it, and it's an afro comb for Black people, already people are like, this is what I'm going to pay for it. Right? And that's just, yeah.
That's so sad, because like I think about when I got married, and like how I would have loved for your company to have existed then, and like the prices that people are paying in the wedding market are crazy prices anyway.
Exactly.
So who does it matter? Because there is that attention to detail, and everybody wants that sort of luxurious feeling for their wedding, so things aren't scrimped on. So why should people be looking at it any differently, because they wouldn't think twice if it was a middle-class white person that was selling the product, would they?
And they don't. The people that get married know it's a very expensive thing to do, and everything costs a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And you don't think twice about that if it's a mainstream or white-owned business. People just don't think twice. Mm-hmm. But again, it is what it is, and I'm navigating through it in the ways that I can, in these stages. Even now, when I'm putting out the calls for, you know, the shoots and the vendors, it is collaboration, but it's like products and service swap. And I've seen lots of people do free work for these white-owned brands and everything else. And whilst we've got the responses, you know, we've got most of the vendors, I should be like inundated, like not be able to open my inbox. Who do you see asking for 100% black-owned, like luxury styled shoot for the wedding industry? No one, nobody, right? So, but it's the mindset. We've all been conditioned in many ways, but I'll work with the people that can get the job done, whether they're popular or not. So for me, it doesn't matter. And we'll get the pictures. And then what will happen is people will see the pictures and be like, oh my God, like the first one, like the first shoot that we did, right? So yeah, it is what it is. But I am definitely trying to get to a point where I can stand back from that brand. Because again, when I think about that one, that's the high-end brand that could act as the second income stream. And then when it's quiet with Happy Hair, for example, which it has been throughout, you know, this madness of what's been happening the past year or so, then we've got that to fall back on, because that's what I was talking about in terms of having off. And it is true, I do need to have more than one income stream, but it is that whole, like, if Happy Hair goes quiet, I've got my tax credit and that's it. My tax credits is like whatever it is, £400-500. I don't even really see that doesn't even cover my bills. So so it's about, why I
respect you is just like, there's so many people out there that, and this is the thing with social media, it's like for many people it's a highlight reel, and I feel like
I know.
I'm sort of frustrated even with this podcast, because I don't feel like I've done justice to you and your story and the breadth of it. No, but it's true, like there's so much to you. I feel emotional.
Oh, don't get me crying, but I did the school run. Oh my gosh, I can't cry in the school run.
No, but seriously, but like as a mother, and like I've seen you working hard, grinding, doing the best for your girl, and I've got so much love and respect for you and for your authenticity, and there's a lot of things that I resonate with in your story, and I just want nothing but the best for you and for your daughter and for all of your businesses. And maybe we can do like a part 2 where we can get into the businesses a bit more, because your life story is so incredible. I wanted to give time for that, but I also want, you know, your businesses to breathe as well, because there's so much stuff we haven't even touched on. So let's do it again if we can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. I really, honestly, I appreciate you. I think it's just one of those things that I said to you, who I've been for a long time, and how I'm received as a person. And, you know, when I come across people like you, and actually most of the time it's strangers that I've either never met, or sometimes it's people that I've not even spoken to, and they'll just reach out to me. They've obviously been watching me, and they'll just say things that it even takes me a while to hear what they're saying, because it's the opposite of what I'm used to. But then it's just like, it makes it, you know, just what you've just said, it's just, for me, it's just like okay, it's just a little nod to me, because I'm not, I hope that I haven't given the perception that it's been easy for me. As much as I get this done, it isn't easy. And I think it is just that I do touch a lot of women, you know, a lot of women and parents. And I think, I feel like that's one of my callings. And that's why I share stuff so much as well, is that when I did that article for The Guardian, I had hundreds of messages, some from America, madness, like just, whoa, you know, your story resonated with me so much. And the business that I was doing at that time was around flexible working for parents. So obviously there was people across the board that were saying, I'm struggling to, you know, get a job. But I think though that's why I share stuff as authentically as I do. One, because it's natural to me now, but two, it's just not enough of it. It's just not enough of it. And I'm not the most palatable person. I'm not that, you know, your typical person that everybody's drawn to. But I will always keep it real, and there will always be people that benefit from that. And I've just had to accept. Before, I wanted to be a certain type of person, that really likable, bubbly, happy person all the time. and I've had to accept that will never be me. I can improve myself, but that will never be me. It's not who I am. It's not who I've been shaped to be, unfortunately. But there is a lot of value in like who I am, what I can share. So yeah, honestly, thank you. Even just for you expressing that to me now, trust me, it to hear it, it never gets old, because I do get lost in the mix of just day to day, you know. But yeah, for sure. I always say to people, I don't know how much detail you want me to go in, because I've had a lot of experience. There's a lot of stuff that's happened in my lifetime. But yeah, for sure, we need to cover some business stuff, maybe some hair stuff too.
Yeah. We'll definitely do it again. Definitely. Because I was like, even as we were going through it, I was like, oh, I need to speak more on that. But where can people find you on the socials?
Which one do we go for? Okay, so at the Happy Hair Co. At the Happy Hair Co. is the main brand. So the Happy Hair Company is the main brand. At the Curly Bride Co. for the Curly Bride Company. At Jamaican Candles is the Jamaican scented candles, but we're taking a break from that at the moment because I want to rebrand. That's got huge potential.
I love that.
Those candles. Like, I see them in shops like this is the first of its kind, and this is one of those situations where I get a bit sad because I know if it wasn't me, that could be in shops right now, like a huge deal in the papers and stuff. And that's where I'm like, no, you know what? I'm going to get an investor for this because this is such a unique like idea. So yeah, that's the Jamaican Candles page, which you can still follow, but it's a bit vacant at the moment. Similar to Diaz J. So Diaz J is around, that's at Diaz XJ, is around wellness and self-care for men, and just candles for men and beard care as well. But I just feel like, I don't know why candles seem like this feminine thing. It's the weirdest thing. Like there's so many benefits to burning a candle and being still and just chilling or whatever. There's just so many benefits to a candle, and it sounds cheesy as hell, like I'm plugging but I don't care if it's mine or not. Having a candle and that sensory experience of having something that you really enjoy the smell of in a moment where you're trying to achieve something that benefits yourself, men absolutely need that. You know, like I just don't know why it's become something that as women we've realised it actually really helps with that whole process, but men don't burn candles. It's wild. But then Drake's dropping a candle line, so watch, this will change soon. Oh yes, he's dropping a candle line. He's rich, so he knows about the benefits of candles. But yeah, that's where you can find us. And then the happyhairco.com website. But if you go to the Instagram, you'll see all the website links. Everything's under the Happy Hair Limited umbrella. So even though it's all different brands at the moment, it's under the one limited company. So most of the stuff, the Curly Bride Company has its own website, and the Happy Hair Co has its own website, but the rest of the stuff are on the main one.
Wicked. Well, thank you so much for just sharing your experience, and for giving us your time. And I look forward to catching up again on a business tip a little bit more so.
So I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, do me a favour, share it with somebody who has been going through a hard time and maybe they've got goals but they can't see a way forward. Share this episode with them and let them know what's possible when you put your mind to it. There's somebody out there that needs to hear Sacha's story. So share it with a friend, tell a friend, share it on your socials, tag us in, let us know that you are sharing that love, because this is how this podcast is going to grow. If you enjoyed it, you can also go ahead, if you're an Apple user, and give us a little 5-star review and a little bit of feedback, because it's always good to hear what you guys are enjoying about the show. You can come and find me over at the Curl Squad and join in the ongoing conversation. Have a good week until next time, girlfriend. Big love. Peace.